Hello there, you're welcome to the only show that brings you happenings in the world of diplomacy and international relations or international affairs, diplomatic affairs. My name is Harriet Nartey. The show comes off every Saturday on the platforms of Pan-African Television between the hours of 4 to 5 o'clock p.m. We are also big on social media. Our Facebook and YouTube pages are very active. So wherever you find yourself in the world, you can always catch up with us and get to know what is happening when it comes to issues pertaining to diplomacy and, of course, the world at large. I am going to take a break. When I come back, I will introduce my guest to you and we will set the agenda for today's show. Welcome back. You are watching Diplomatic Affairs with me, Harriet Nartey. Now, last week, if you joined us on the show, we discussed the review of the year 2024. We took a step back so we could look at the major events in the world of diplomacy and international relations that took place, and also we focused on the tenure of the former president of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Some of the things that happened around Ghana's foreign policy and our dealings with the rest of the world, our international or development partners. You know, when it comes to these major issues, we need the services of the experts so that we can delve into the subjects and also explore and get to know really what is happening. And the only person who can help us, or one of the few when it comes to issues pertaining to this particular area, is a very good friend of ours, Farouk Al-Wahab. Farouk is a very good friend of ours, like I mentioned. He's an experienced diplomatic and investments consultant, expert in international relations, Africa, world politics, and of course, governance. He is well-grounded and fairly balanced in Africa and international security affairs and state protocol. So he is an international diplomatic consultant. Farouk.
Hajia.
Good to see you again.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you too.
How are you?
Inshallah. I'm very fine.
Very good to have you in the studio. Thank you so much for your time once again. So last week when you appeared on the show, we looked back and we are still looking back.
Yes.
Yeah, we looked at 2024, the tenure of the former president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo,
Yep.
Ghana's foreign policy, our dealings with the rest of the world, our development partners. A lot of interesting issues that we touched on last week. We talked about the demolition of Nigeria's High Commission, parts of the property that was demolished by a private investor. We also touched on the chip-embedded passport, which has been introduced by the previous administration. And we also looked at the visa-free entry for all African nationalists and Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister, former Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister's appointment as the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Her Excellency Shirley Ayoko Botchwey. So we touched on these basic events that happened in the past, which was just 2024,
yes,
and some other interesting areas. Now we are going to continue with our conversation. We didn't finish. We tabled 10 major events,
yes,
and we want to take our audience back, look back with them before we take a step forward. So in as much as I am very much tempted not to talk about, because the plan is to just go back, take stock of the year, Excellency's tenure, and then before we talk about, developments, as we have a new administration forming its government, His Excellency Mahama is already on the move. But I need to do this before we move on. So please, let me just ask you, what do you make of Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwe's nomination as Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister?
Well, I think it was expected, and he himself was very expectant. We had a lot of names crisscrossing post the presidential elections right before. He happens to be one of the names that came out. Of course, some of them were induced by public interest. Some of them were induced by the people themselves. In as much as you and I are aware of, Okudzeto undoubtedly had been warming himself over the last 8 years to lead this country as the foreign affairs. So I'm not surprised he got it. Foreign Affairs Ministry is a place and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs happens, whether he knows it or not, to be the secretary of the country in any case. It is one of the key protocol, let me call it setup, or the ministry that actually projects the country. The first person known outside the president is the Foreign Affairs Secretary. Nobody knows about local government minister. Nobody wants to know your science minister and energy. When your foreign minister goes out there and fumble and commit any blunder, it has a very serious effect on the country. Yes, understandably, Okujeto is not a diplomat. But however, he has warmed himself and shown interest in diplomacy.
Right.
Foreign ministry and being a foreign minister is different from being a diplomatic foreign minister. Let us get that distinction very clear, so that we will shape up and support Samuel to know where he's coming from. He is coming from, yes, a political setup.
Right.
And he's coming from a place where he himself has warmed himself in parliament. That itself does not, of course, make him a career diplomat. He's not. So now we have a political appointment and a political minister of foreign affairs whom I believe is prepared to learn and learning. Now, I like his energy level. He's a young, vibrant man. Here is the catch. He, as an advice, even though a comment, must be prepared to learn diplomacy on top of just not being a ranking member in parliament on diplomatic affairs, because at that time in parliament, none of them showed maybe interest. That is why he warmed himself and then stepped in to do that. Two,
as the ranking member for the
Foreign Affairs Committee. And moreover, this is a country that we do not train diplomats, but there's a country that we train politicians.
But we train diplomats.
Well, if you look at the ratio, if you train diplomats.
Recently, we've just established the Foreign Service Institute. We were there for the commissioning. It is yet to be operational.
Let's see how many.
And before that, I want to believe that, yes, Lesiad, the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, and there have been a few exchange programs also with some of our development partners.
How many of them become practical diplomats? Going to classroom to go and learn theoretical aspect of diplomacy, not putting into practice. Diplomacy is more vocational. Diplomacy is more practical. If you go out there to read diplomacy or international relations anyway, it does not make you also a diplomat. You have not been trained as a diplomat. There's a difference between having a diplomatic, let's say, training from an institute and then being trained as a diplomat. On the ground. Those are the two things that we're talking about. And if I say the country does not train diplomats, it means that when even our concurrent embassies and diplomatic missions, how many of them that do we send out there? We send so the political diplomats, they go out there to man our missions. That is a big problem. Yes, back to Okujeto, we pray and we are prepared to support him to succeed. One of the things that diplomats do not do, that I believe, that if whoever is listening, one, he is part of the anti-graft, which I will call it the oral. If His Excellency President Mahama had made Okujeto the nominated Minister of Foreign Affairs, it is incumbent and diplomatically required immediately to take him off the ORA. The ORA is a graft, is an investigative body. Diplomacy is about trust. The
constitutionality of that particular setup has even been questioned.
I wouldn't even go there. Whether it has been questioned, we have good lawyers also from NDC that says that's legitimate. That is not my concern. I'm concerned about my Secretary of State, my foreign minister. You can't have a foreign minister who is part and parcel of an investigative body called the ORA, because we are dealing with a trust. It is trust-related issue if you are foreign minister. You are going to deal, everybody wants to speak to you on the table of transparency based on trust, based on diplomacy, a lot of things. But you can't find yourself being also out there investigating commercial issues, what and what related issues. A diplomatic person in the capacity of foreign minister, that is not your world. Two, Mr. Okujeto, Samuel is a friend. Again, being a foreign minister of a country, you have to be very, very careful and be very balanced in dealing politically, because you are not representing only NDC. You are representing Ghana.
The entire country.
Entire country. You are going to deal with foreign affairs, diplomats who are career diplomats at the missions. Not everybody is an NDC. So you must be very careful, be a foreign minister, and you become the partisan type of a foreign minister belonging to one side. You have problems with your diplomats. And mind you, you are not going to work alone. We are going to work with the entire about 90 missions related to Ghana. Again, foreign minister of every country, you must prepare his mind that he must really touch base and learn diplomacy more than having a knowledge of diplomacy. What am I saying? You are going to meet crack diplomats. You are going to meet people, somebody in the likes of Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov.
Yeah, very experienced diplomats for Russia.
You see, if you meet the French diplomats, and of course,
diplomacy
is the home of diplomacy.
French.
They don't bring anybody because he belongs to a political arena. Germans don't bring anybody because it's from the political arena. UKs don't bring anybody because it's from the political platform. They bring people who are, in most cases, if you go to the Nordic countries, Norway, Iceland, Finland, and Sweden, and then also Denmark. Their career diplomats, in most cases, they don't belong to any party. They are trained by the foreign services, a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they push them, bring them to lead the country forward, because anything that goes wrong with your word, it affects the country. That is why American Secretary of States, they are seen more and they are known more outside more than the president.
Well, curiosity drove me to actually find out if the position can also be given to a career diplomat. And I was told that usually this particular portfolio is given to, it's a political appointment.
It's a political appointment because it's a party in question. The president has his views. The presidency, don't forget that they come with manifesto. It's only Ghana that we run with manifesto, what you are talking about, because our country is run not by a national plan, it's run by a manifesto of a party. So if you say it's a political, agreed. But the point, whoever says that is not a position for a career diplomat, I'm sorry to say that most of the nations, they bring their career diplomats either retired or converted diplomats sitting. What are we talking about here? If United States, you find a foreign minister, Secretary of State, for instance, and the person happened to be a former U.S. ambassador, that's predominantly most of the things that you see. So who says that they don't bring career diplomat? Career diplomat does not only relate and mean that somebody who is sitting in the office, they go and bring him, that let's say from foreign affairs and be a foreign minister. Yes, politically, you and I know. Do we take science and technology in Ghana here, scientists to be a science and technology? No, we take party activists. What about Ministry of Health? How many doctors have we sent to that ministry? We'll still take partisan approach and then just only non-professionals over there. We're talking about politics. That is one of the problems.
Do you think he is going to do a good job? Should he get the nod?
He should be. The nod automatically.
Does he have what it takes to deliver?
He has what it takes. If only one. My friend Samuel, please, if you are listening, he should stop politics.
He watches diplomatic affairs.
He should stop politics at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as you would feel. Two, he is going to meet. I've talked to you over when we went to Kenya to sign the Ngonge Yamapoja Declaration in the 2nd to 11th December 2019, where Ayoko represented the Foreign Ministers Forum, Alan Chomatin represented the Trade Ministers, Nana Addo Dankwa came for the heads of states, etc. It was 11-day program. When the Foreign Affairs, they do the collation and they set up the pace of the listen. You meet somebody, the likes of the Côte d'Ivoire foreign minister. They've all been trained as diplomats in their country and then projecting them as a foreign minister. These are the things I'll plead with our friend. He's very intelligent, he's very smart, he's very clever. But please, Samuel, diplomacy, please take your time and rise through it. It's not only 2 weeks training at the GIMPA to prepare you as a foreign minister, that brings you only to know the foreign public services and the public relations and how to deal with the public services at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But that alone is not enough.
But he's capable of doing the
He
job.
is capable of
Thank
doing
you.
that. He's a very sharp and smart guy
All
to
right.
learn. He just only have to limit and tone down
Okay.
politics
All right.
and then deal with it. And then the last thing, as I've mentioned already, the anti-graft, the oral. If President Mama wants the best for his foreign minister, he should take him off that particular committee.
Okay, so brilliant. Thank you very much for that insight. We appreciate it a lot. And of course, we are wishing the honorable nominee the best of luck. We hope that he will get the nod, and we know that he has this learning spirit and he's willing to also bring his A game to making sure that he handles this task very well for us as a country. All right then, so let's move on to another interesting topic. UNESCO recognizes Kente as a Ghanaian heritage. UNESCO recognizes Kente as a Ghanaian heritage. Now, I'm going to just give you a background to the story, and then I would want you to share your expertise on this particular subject. Ghana's famous hand-woven cloth has become the best known and most widely recognized of all African textiles. For Ghanaians, Kente cloth epitomizes the finest creativity, far transcending in its material splendor. However, its intangible properties. Also significant is its value as a unifying symbol for the infinitely heterogeneous sets of people that constitute the African race on the continent and in the diaspora. Even within Ghana, its capacity to cut across ethnic divisions and instill a sense of national pride is extraordinary. Indeed, Kente represents a significant cultural symbol that seems to bring Ghanaians together as one people. Undoubtedly, this again puts Ghana on the world map. I think this is brilliant because this is Ghana we are talking about. I just have, I think at this point I have two questions. Ghana has a diverse background.
Yes.
In terms of culture, the people. Yes. We have different things that actually make us as Ghanaians. And I'm just wondering, what really went into, obviously a lot of research, must have gone into this to make a decision to eventually, put this out there, given it's the recognition and all of that. But how does that actually sit with the people of Ghana, given the fact that we have a diverse background when it comes to culture? We have a lot of things, like I mentioned. Do you think that, let me just ask, is this right?
It's more than right. It could have been food. They could have decided to choose a food that Ghanaians identifies or which identifies Ghanaians. But they are talking about a cloth. They are talking about Kente cloth. Let us not forget that UNESCO has done this in different countries, i.e. Kenya, the Maasais. We have the identity of the Maasai beads, which is their heritage and the symbolic heritage of the Kenyan people. Notwithstanding, Kenya has diverse views, diverse culture, like us. They have also strong, barricaded tribal settings. Notwithstanding, when you mention Kenya, outside Kenya, what comes into mind? You know the Maasai's cloth. You know the Maasai's beads.
Yes.
It does not mean that if somebody is Lua or somebody is which a Kikuyu, they don't have different, or somebody is Maasai, they don't have different things that identifies them that they are Kenyans.
Right.
Our own, the infusion here is that, one, our weddings, our important programs,
Right.
our former presidents, i.e. Kwame Nkrumah, he had presented Kente and then a shirt, call it a bubu or whatever that you call it. He has appeared on United Nations platforms, all same African Union, the OAU platforms in particular thing, repeated by even the military leaders on different occasions. repeated by all the presidents. And we are not saying that the head of states, all the 14 head of states since independence, are all from one tribal settings. No, they are from different, like you said, diverse tribal settings. And all of them have embraced. So we are yet to see in Ghana here, as your question was, that which of the tribes. Yes, when you go to the north, we have this Fugu,
yes,
which everybody.
We have the Northern Kente,
Kente as well.
Which is very much in vogue lately.
Yes, but you see the one widely, largely used. So whoever, don't forget the UNESCO also work through researchers.
Right. Like
so the researchers, some of them are from Ghana, local ones, and then they bring researchers. So they might have come here and do what is called normal 90 days or 6 months program to understudy our culture, what makes us Ghana uniquely one people, one destiny, etc. Yes, we have different type of dressing that also identifies certain particular clan, tribe, racial, let's say a particular race within the country Ghana. But they look at holistic, they look at the entire country, which one of them had been the most effective, efficient, and commonly used one, out of which they came out. That does not mean that we don't have the Volta Kente.
Right.
We have also the Northern, the Batakari, which everybody, even now when you go to our programs like swearing in a president or swearing in, what do we see? We know more or less have shifted to Nigeria. Kaftan is widely used almost the whole country. But ideally, Kaftan had not been the dress. It was the senator's dress, official of Nigeria. We've adopted it. So every country has a bit of anything, like the Igbos and their hat and their walking stick, the Yorubas and also their bubu and their beads. Every country has, on the African continent, that makes us a very cultural race.
Unique.
That makes unique, you understand? So UNESCO, I think for me, it's even long overdue because they've done a lot in other countries.
Right.
The Indian, the Red Indians. Are you getting me? The Mexicans, you're talking the Peru, the Colombiana, and then all that place, El Salvador, San Salvador. If you look at the Latin and Southern America, they also have peculiar type of cloth. What about the KwaZulu-Natal of South Africa? Are you getting me? They also, the KwaZulus, the Zulus have also particular wrapper, which is like a blanket type. That even on occasion, in the afternoon, a KwaZulu or Zulu president like Jacob Zuma, he was wearing them. What about the Lesotho? What about the Swatini? What about them, the king of Swatini? Every African country has what it takes and what to identify them. It is our turn for the UNESCO, and I believe that such a research or such a recognition will not have any effect, and any Ghanaian will seem to have any problem. And I have said and I've mentioned that if there is any country on the continent of Africa, which out of the 56, I know 54, there's no country that crisscross tribal marriage, religious tolerance. We are all, including you and I, every Ghanaian is a United Nations child from a different country, from a different father, from a different tribe.
So there's a step in the right direction.
We are very
for
closely
identifying
Kente.
Kente.
It is unique because any tribe cuts across, we bring in there, and a special modern day.
All right.
Look at the weddings going out there. Every wedding.
It's become very symbolic.
Yeah, very symbolic. So
very,
I think
very symbolic.
UNESCO, thumbs up.
Okay, all right. So this is something that brings all of us together.
Exactly.
It is not just attributed to one particular clan or ethnicity. All right. Thank you so much for shedding some light on that.
Yes.
Right, now we are going to move away from home.
Okay.
We are going to move away from home and focus on the rest of the world, what's happening elsewhere. But elsewhere, let's talk about BRICS 2024 summit.
Yes.
It appears BRICS is here to stay. There have been a lot of activities in advancing the cause of BRICS. Now, I'm just going to give you a background story to this particular one, and then we'll take it from there. 10 nations graced the 16th BRICS summit held in the Russian city of Kazan from October 22 to 24, 2024. It was also the first event to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and United Arab Emirates as members, themed Strengthening Multilateralism for Fair Global Development and Security. Member nations adopted the Kazan Declaration, endorsed the reform of the United Nations Security Council, and the full participation of Palestine in the United Nations contingent upon the two-state solution. Farouk, let's shed some light on BRICS. BRICS obviously is here to stay. I am tempted to give an advanced update of what's happening with this particular organization. It seeks to promote South-South cooperation, and it has recently, I read that Nigeria has signed up or subscribed as a partner. And I think Africa, when it comes to Africa, Africa is trying to play it smart and cautiously so that they do not actually offend, if I can use that word, the West when it comes to their key development partners. And so they are trying to play it safe. I'm not really sure, but I know you come to that. However, I would want us to talk about BRICS. Is it sustainable? Is it really de-dollarization and all of that, trying to introduce a currency that would promote trade, among member states? Is this really going to survive the test of time?
Okay. Look at it from this point. It's part of the world order. And we should be looking at the countries that find themselves out there. These are the modern day emerging markets. Brazil happens to be there. Russia, a strong ally. China, a strong ally. Pakistan, a strong ally.
India.
South Africa, a strong ally. India, a strong ally. Now, if you put the BRICS nations and their population of the BRICS nations, they are more or closing up to 40% of the entire population of the world. The population of the BRICS nations, as few as they are. Are you getting me?
Yes.
But then in terms of their economies, their GDP, as President Mahama echoed on his inaugural address on the inauguration day, he made mention quietly but silently. He meant that Ghana's economy would take a look at, one he mentioned, we have developing partners since independence of about 6 countries that have supported this country indeed to survive as a developing partners. The United States have helped us with our military through United States aid, etc., infrastructure, defense. They've helped us to budget. We have constant budget from United Kingdom that has supported us, education, technology, culture, blah, blah, blah. We have the likes of Holland that has supported us, our Ministry of Interior, Immigration, Police, etc. They've been a development partners. Canada, through the CEDA, have been our permanent development partners. Japan and Germany complete the list with infrastructure, with technology, etc. So we have 6 permanent or more. Now, President Mahama mentioned that the G7 countries, of course, not all the G7 countries, but I would say the G20 countries have been our developing partners. We had of late the Chinese being trading partner, and then Russia had also been a partner of Ghana since Kwame Nkrumah's time, helping us on some few things, training Ghanaian doctors. Poland was part, Czech Republic was part. Now the BRICS, they see themselves, I won't call them the anti-West, but then I would also call them, as it was mentioned sometime ago, the lunatic governments. I don't want to use that as it has mentioned before. They are not. These are countries that have come together, that have identified themselves together to lead and to do economic, their aspirations, bring it together, and then push marketability. They want their currency, but then of course the target is that they will not allow American dollar, i.e., that is the world's most commercially international currency or treasury being used. So they also want to bring up a currency. So sign up to it if you want to be a member. Sign up to it if you want also economic liberation assistance, support, etc. The same way the West will do for you, we are also, indeed, part of the BRICS countries could also be, why we call them also from the West. Do you understand me? So the idea of the Western, the West, etc., there's no West anywhere, there's no East anywhere. Because when there used to be the East, even in Europe, there's no East. In terms of the geographical, you call the East, but in terms of forms of economic, you can't call Poland today that is an Eastern Europe as it used to be dubbed, to be called in those days. So the BRICS nations, they are very rich if you look at it from that point. Technologically, China is a strong member that can take most of these countries and support them if they have a proper agreement. Now we have Russia in there. We have Iran in there. But the caution here and the fear of the West is that when these three countries even alone talk about the Russia, talk about the China, and talk about the Iran, supported by Brazil, and they have a military alliance, it's a big problem for the West. Because their army, the size of the army of these three countries or four countries alone is bigger than the army, strongest army in the world, what you will call how many countries? The UK army, the Royal Army, and the France and the United States. So Americans and the West are looking at not only the money aspect, the currency aspect, they're looking at the military aspect of it.
So military might is very
because
important.
the military might is that the technological, competition and the kind of army China is having today, if it's supported by Russia, and if supported by Iran, supported by Pakistani, supported by South Africa, then it reminds the world of the Axis power. Now the Axis power nations, some of them find themselves out. Which countries are the Axis power? The Axis power, surprisingly, Ethiopia goes in there. The Axis power, Japan might, or assuming, China was the West in the Second World War, but most of the Axis power, they find themselves in this BRICS. What does it tell? What it tells you is that the West is not being, they are not having a fever, thinking, in my view, not only the currency, but then we have a NATO, which some of these countries are members. But when they have a body called BRICS, that is a foundation owned, created, established by their own, then there might be an attempt in the future that you see them drifting out from the NATO, as we are seeing in the West Africa, Sahel, being now a group of three country alliance of Sahel. It is the same way. So Sahel is giving fever and headaches to ECOWAS. All same, BRICS is giving fever and a lot of pressure and heat to the Western. Now, United Nations, in my view, in the next 20 years, might be in a big dilemma. They might be in a dilemma, meaning that when these BRICS nations are well established, they are well composed, and they have economically established well, there might be an attempt, some of them giving away goodbye UN. And you cannot force them to stay, because there are, of course, countries on the world, in this particular world as we live in today, who are not part and parcel of the UN membership. There are countries that will move out from certain blocks and join others. There are countries that will move out from the African Union and call themselves, we are BRICS member nations. Forget about African Union. Forget about ECOWAS. What about that? What do you see? South Africa joined BRICS, calling for the shot, inviting the BRICS nation and held, how do we call it, one of their meetings, one of their sessions out there. It became a heated issue for the West, but they could not be bothered. You heard the stories, you heard what the South African foreign minister said to them. I'm referring to the West. He said that nobody, this is a sovereign nation, with our sovereignty right, nobody has the access or the chance to come and dictate and tell whom South Africa should invite and what South Africa should do.
Right.
This is a strong
It's a sovereign country.
It's a sovereign country, so you cannot tell them what to do. And therefore, BRICS coming together, I think, is still teething as an organization, as an institution,
Right.
as a union, as a member organization. But when they are properly established, don't forget, European Union started way back before I got to where they are. African Union started way back before they got to where they are. ECOWAS, since 1975, for us, we are still poor. We are still where they were in 1975. It was even better.
We will
But
get there.
now we won't get anywhere. Leave it. Stop it.
We will get there.
I know you're ECOWAS
There have
correspondent.
been
Stop
quite
it.
some reforms recently.
Reforms
so
have
we
been.
are hoping that
We've been
those
having reforms. We
will
are
be
changing the topic. Reforms of
okay.
ECOWAS
So let's
have
talk.
been
We are still talking about BRICS. We are still talking about BRICS.
So BRICS nations, for me, it is good thing. There should be a competition, not arms competition in the world. There should be economic competition of the world. What does it mean? Countries like ours, we are bedeviled with overburdened ages and ancient pre-medieval costs of what? Loans that we took. It's so burdening us. We have loans that is still on the neck of Ghana since 1957. We haven't so paid it, and we are still what?
Accumulating more.
We are servicing those loans. But so when BRICS comes, we will see a shift in the operations and instructions of organizations like IMF. We will see a shift in operations of the World Bank. So let's see if the BRICS nations have also the BRICS Bank in South Africa, where Ghana can go there and access loan. One, very easy. Two, interest rate very simple. Four, it comes with other benefits. It will support and it will help as compared to IMF that comes to give a token, a 3 billion to a country like Ghana for God's sake. And they tell you that let all wives sleep in jeans and every man, let all men do X, Y, Z. Those are the laws, including our social lives, are impeded because you've collected our money.
Okay.
That aspect, in my view, the world needs a new order and a change for us to see how the world will shape up with this BRICS. Let us compete. I believe in competition.
Yes, we all believe in competition. So let's see how BRICS is able to position itself to, cater to its member states. So for now, we are just following developments. Hopefully, when we meet, we'll talk about the latest updates. Like I said, de-dollarization is one of the focuses when it comes to what's the objectives of this particular organization. Now, let's move away from BRICS and let's do Syria. We are wrapping up with Syria.
Okay.
We are wrapping up with Syria. Now, Syria's it appears the family dynasty has crashed, if I can put it that way. Syria's long-serving leader, Bashar al-Assad, who assumed office following his father's death in 2000, was ousted by rebels on December 8, 2024. In November 2024, a coalition of Syrian rebels mounted numerous offensives with the intention of ousting him. Following their entry to Damascus on December 8, 2024, Assad's regime collapsed as he fled from Russia. He fled to Russia and sought political asylum. Did we see this coming with Assad's regime?
It was incubated.
It was incubated?
Yes.
By who?
By called ISIS.
For
was
what?
Initially. Well, they just wanted Assad out. But don't forget that within the Middle East region, there is a serious interest. Syria's regime. The interest, as you all know, it was seen as Russia protecting, safeguarding, and guarding the Syria regime. When there had been, or the rebels unleashed pressure on Aleppo some couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, whereas ISIS was developed from that bombardment, whilst ISIS had an issue fighting with the Syrian army. At the same time, Al-Qaeda was operating, which is also Daesh, called the Al-Qaeda, they were operating, and then rebels. Now, if we talk about also another shift and funny complexity of the Western dynamics, in another brand, we don't want ISIS. It is what a terrorist organization branded, hated by the Americans, hated by the British, hated by the Western world. But in another development, ISIS is also being heaped with praises, being able to attack, how do we call it, Assad government. When Aleppo fall into the hands of the rebels, at that time, the country that came in to defend more or less for Syria was Russia. So it became a fight of Russia with ISIS, a fight of Russia with Al-Qaeda, a fight of Russia against, let's say, Syria, supporting Syria. Now, it went quietly. Assad didn't expect this coming. Some of us knew it was coming because now, anytime Israel is on the move in that region, then enemies of Israel must be very careful because there is a concentration. Who are the enemies of Israel? Hezbollah, for instance. And then Assad's government in Syria, they had never been in good books. Even though they have that kind of a cautious relationship, don't forget that they fought in the past. The Syria-Israeli, it was the Syria-Israeli and then Israeli and Egypt. These were the ancient and the olden fight that had existed. Somehow they cooled off the pace in a while. But when Israel shook up itself and started grounding with Palestine, bombarding and entering forcibly in Lebanon and shaking off, some of us knew that it will not end up there because they know that some of the shifts of the rebels or the terrorists, they are there. But the surprise thing is that this rebel team that came to hit Assad, how many were they? Who are they? So military experts, diplomatic experts have said, and they've said that these rebels were rebels that were noted, some of them from Kurdistan and some of them from other nations that all came out with this ISIS ideology, philosophy, and then also call it a rebellion psychology. This team were branded by the West as hardened criminals, were branded by the West as what? Terrorists, were branded by the West as a whole lot of names that were given to them. How were they able to resurrect, package themselves? Where did they have the weapons? The kind of
the
weapons,
resources,
the resources, the ammunitions, the technology. And then look at the dynamic entry and the easiness with which Assad could not. Because when even this time around was not Aleppo, they marched within a matter of a week. They were already in where? They were already in Damascus. It tells you, some of us who have dealt with these organizations, etc., that we know how it operates. I'm talking about international dynamics of politics and then the Middle East. You realize that the entry, to me, was not, quote unquote, only these rebels. These were experienced hands because they didn't go, they went unannounced and they went undercover. And then the entry and how the target, within a matter of a day or two, they were at the doorsteps of Assad. Then, of course, look at the exit of Assad itself and how the Russians, of course, Assad didn't just sit in any aircraft and bolted away.
Right.
No. The Russians lifted him out of that danger and said, okay, I'm done. Yes, it brings an era of Assad, Bashar, and the father regime, which was more or less a monarchy. That aspect of it is what actually, but then the caution here again is that if the West, now they are hailing the same rebels that were terrorist branded, would now also let it be like the grounds of a fighting arena, as happened after the fall of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi by the same West supporting a rebel organization to take Libya off. The question is that, do we have a government in Libya today? The answer is capital N-O, no.
Yes.
Do we have a democratic government?
We do now.
We will do now.
It's the latest. That's the latest development.
Thank you.
So Libya
so,
has a government, a president for
we want to
for the
see,
first time in a
we
long
want
time.
to see, yeah, well, we have cosmetic presidency. We had one in Iraq. We have one all over. That is okay. The proper governance, the proper political structure, the proper establishment is what we are talking about. Yes, Assad is gone. Assad is gone quietly with his wife and children unhurt. They are going to stay either in Kachan or they are going to stay either in whatever, Leningrad, to go and enjoy. Fine. What about the people of Syria? How are the rebels? How experienced are they? Then you will suddenly see a shift of so-called other countries, other interested parties, other Western interested parties, now fomenting and creating problems on the country. In that case, that makes it a bit worse. So sometimes the worst form of a government called dictatorship, to some extent, turns out to stabilize a nation, even though politically not the best, even though freedom not the best, but then he who comes to liberate me, first to give me what I deserve, but rather comes to infiltrate and cause the problem in the West. This is where question must be taken diplomatically.
Right. So experts have said, and I've been following events regarding this particular subject, that the people of Syria want to take their destiny into their own hands. Like you said, they wanted this government out so that they could form a new government. Per the will of the people. Unfortunately, conversations are still ongoing, and we hope that eventually they would arrive at, there will be some kind of, so that they can be able to run the affairs of their country as they should. So we are following developments. We'll bring you, of course, our audience, the updates regarding all the subjects or the topical issues that we have touched on today's episode of the show. All right, then. So this is where we get done with today's assignment. And I must say it's always a pleasure. We are very privileged to have you on the show, joining us every now and then, providing insights when it comes to the various topics that we treat on the show, educating and informing the general public. So we are very grateful to you always for coming on board. All right, then. So this is where we draw the curtain on today's production. My guest, of course, Farouk Al-Wahab, is a diplomatic and international consultant, and he's all over. He's all over. I've been trying. You have no idea what I go through to be able to get him to join me on the show. I have to book him in advance to get him to make some time for us. But we are always grateful. Thank you so much, Farouk, once again.
Thank you, Arrivederci. Thank you.
And thank you also for watching. So we have done the review of the year 2024, the major topical issues that happened in the year 2024, and of course, the tenure of the former president of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. We've touched on all the issues that happened regarding Ghana's foreign policy and of course our dealings with the rest of the world or international partners. Now, away from that, we will be coming back next week, Saturday. When we come back, that's when we run the marathon together. We have so much happening. We'll discuss the president's first move, his diplomatic assignments. We'll talk about it. Yes, we have all of that. Hopefully, when we come back, we should have the Foreign Affairs Minister for Ghana.
Well, we pray that they should vet him
quickly. Please do so quickly, so we can have our Foreign Affairs Minister.
Normally, the normal practices, a Foreign Affairs Minister to me must be the second. They should call alongside the Finance Minister. Right. The President needs money.
Yeah, quickly to be able to run the affairs.
But at the same time, the moment you come now, the President has gone out twice. And he's going to go out. Your Foreign Minister,
should be
your Secretary must be with you. So they should quickly do it.
We will have the Vice President. So
well, the Vice President be there, but then when the President is traveling, the Foreign Minister that actually has to, not only the operations from the Presidency.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will see you same time next week, and it is always a pleasure to have you on our show.